BC will not seek an extension of its Health Canada exemption that allowed the decriminalization of small amounts of drugs for personal possession. The 3-year pilot project will formally end at the end of this month on January 31st, and Health Minister Josie Osborne spoke with reporters about the decision yesterday in Victoria.
In 2023, we launched a pilot program to decriminalize people who use drugs. Our intention was clear: to make it easier for people who are struggling with addiction to come forward and seek help. From the beginning, this pilot was designed as a time-limited trial with ongoing monitoring built in so we could understand what was working, what wasn't, and where changes were needed. However, the pilot hasn't delivered the results that we hoped for. And after very careful consideration, we are not asking the federal government to renew the exemption.
That is Josie Osborne, BC's health minister, speaking with media yesterday. Now, the province's decision to formally end decriminalization was expected, but a lot of questions remain about how recriminalization will play out in BC municipalities this year. Leonard Krog is the mayor of Nanaimo, and he joins us this morning. Good morning to you, Mayor Krog.
Good morning.
Your thoughts first off on the official end of this decriminalization pilot. What do you think of it?
Look, I never thought this pilot was going to work. I didn't support it. I'm glad they're ending it. For practical purposes, the police across this province, whether it were municipal police forces or the RCMP, weren't arresting serious addicts with small amounts of drugs. That was the reality. Suggesting, as was the purpose of it, that we would destigmatize drug use, that people would be encouraged to take advantage of whatever supports were available, I never thought was going to work. From a practical perspective, I don't think it will make much difference on our streets. I don't think we'll see a perceptible difference, except that the police may feel more comfortable in taking steps to enforce the law as it relates to public drug use in order to ensure that people get the supports and treatment and some access that they might need. However, again, my old saw here, without secure and voluntary care for the severe cases, which Julian Daly in Victoria has been talking about a lot, without a proper continuum of care, I don't think we'll see a significant improvement.
Minister Osborne said that the pilot has not delivered the results that they wanted to see, but she was asked by 3 different reporters yesterday how those results were measured, and she couldn't give any metrics. They didn't have any data. And the minister also said that the public safety conversation in BC had become very challenging. How much of this is about data and results, and how much of it is a response to political pressure?
Oh, look, I don't think there's any question it's a response to political pressure. I'm sure that the Premier, and I don't say this unkindly, if he had announced this closure, so to speak, this finish of this failed experiment before the last provincial election, he might well have a majority government instead of fighting to stay in power as the government has to now. I don't think they ever had the data. I don't think they were keeping the data. I bet you I can go to Vancouver, the Island Health Authority, for instance, and get very clear statistics about how many AIDS cases there are in Vancouver Island, how many people are in hospital because of respiratory illnesses right now. But we have a population who is abandoned in our streets. They live in the shadows, many of them. They're not on anybody's radar often in many cases. Those are the folks out there who really need the help. Those are the people in the desperate circumstances. And with great respect, the public belief is those are the people who are committing the kinds of petty crimes to support their drug habits because they suffer from concurrent disorders, mental health issues, addiction issues, trauma, and brain injury, who led to the closure of the Shoppers Drug Mart in the downtown east side.
Or the London Drugs in the downtown east
London
side.
Drugs, sorry.
No trouble. Former Vancouver mayor, speaking of Vancouver, former Mayor Kennedy Stewart led Vancouver's bid to decriminalize drug possession, and then the province got involved. He spoke with the CBC's Jody Martinson yesterday on the coast, and he said that the province rushed the pilot through at the beginning, and he called the decision to end it cowardice. I want you to hear just a little bit more of what he had to say.
They're just caving to political pressure. and this is the problem with going province-wide. If they just stuck with the city proposal, we have many overdose prevention sites, we have supervised consumption sites, we've got all kinds of harm reduction folks all around the city. The police were on board, the First Nations were on board, the city was on board, unanimous consent at the city of Vancouver, but the province rolled it out in communities that this was the first time they'd ever heard it. And of course there's going to be backlash. It would be, you're seeing it in the housing responses. Like, if you don't work with communities to bring that in, it's going to fail. And this is, again, what in academic circles, we call this a policy disaster. And it sits firmly at the feet of this cabinet.
So that is former Vancouver Mayor Kennedy Stewart. What do you think?
Look, I think he has a valid point, but it's a valid point in a broader sense. The reality is, this province has not had the continuum of care necessary to deal with this for several decades, since we started shutting down places like Riverview, since the drug supply became more toxic, since the addictive quality of the drugs has become much worse. We have not had in place the supports necessary. The concept was people would come to overdose prevention sites, they would feel comfortable using their drugs in public places, and that would somehow reduce the stigma. They'd be able to access services. The services, with respect, were never there in the quantity that was necessary. To that extent, former Mayor Kennedy Stewart is right about the city of Vancouver. But you can't just have some kind of social experiment in one part of the province. I said over and over again, even two parents who are deeply addicted didn't want to walk down the streets of their community with their 7-year-old child and have them see someone else engaging in open drug use. It was not going to work on a political level. And from a health perspective, it appears we don't have the statistics to suggest it's worked on a health level either.
And so do you think the NDP jumped on this pilot when it was politically popular and then jumped off it when it was no longer popular?
Oh, look, I don't think it was ever going to be popular. With great respect, it offended the common sense, I think, of the average British Columbian, and I regard myself as an average British Columbian. I don't think my response to this has been any different than any other person. We want to see the human misery solved. None of us want to see people in our streets suffering and dying over time, committing crimes, petty offenses, frightening the population, making our downtowns places where cities are forced to spend millions of dollars trying to upgrade or enforce laws or provide community safety officers in order to attract people so that we don't kill our downtowns. Nobody was going to support this. I said that from the start. I said it to our local MLAs. With great respect, it frustrates me that we've come to this conclusion now. So if the province is serious about this, then we have to acknowledge that this is a serious political issue, but most importantly, it is a serious health issue, and it requires commitment of resources. And I know that's easy to say from my perspective. I'm not raising your income tax or the sales tax. I get that.
Yep.
But I'm sorry, it's not going to get better on its own.
One criticism that the province has heard throughout this pilot is that there are simply not enough recovery resources in BC. And then the minister announced yesterday an expansion of a phone line called Access Central that connects people to addiction supports. Do you think that will make any difference?
Look, with great respect, the people that I am most concerned about are not someone who's slipping into addiction, who has a home and perhaps a job. I'm concerned about the people who don't have phones, who don't have a place to sleep at night. 80% of the population who live in the streets of Nanaimo, the roughly 800, 700 people, they don't have a shelter bed at night. Do we honestly think they're going to wander into some facility at some point during the day and say, gee, I have a serious addiction issue and no one's treating my severe schizophrenia. Can I get some help? I mean, I'm sorry. And I sound angry this morning because I am angry. I think we're all tired of this. We are tired of hearing the sad stories from parents and family members who have seen their family members die, literally, as a result of a lack of care and treatment. Get on with it. Please get on with it, Mr. Premier. Make it your priority. It's not just the politically sensible and popular thing to do. It is the right thing to do for the health of British Columbians, the health of our economies, the health of our downtowns, the health of our other citizens who are suffering as the results of the behavior that flow from people who are living with untreated mental health, addiction, trauma, and brain injury.
And so if both major parties in BC are back to advocating for involuntary care, does that say the politicians in this province have run out of ideas?
I don't think they've run out of ideas. I think they finally, at a certain level, most people just come around to common sense. Did we honestly think when we had thousands and thousands of British Columbians in institutional care in the 60s, before we started shutting down beds, that suddenly that population got better? Again, it offends the common sense of the average British Columbian. And the fear of acknowledging that there is an appropriate place in the spectrum of care for secure involuntary care or compassionate compulsory care, as Mayor Diaz in Kelowna says, to suggest it doesn't exist is silly. It's part of the continuum of care, and those severe cases are the ones causing the most difficulty. I just met yesterday with our CEO and the Regional Crown Council to talk about the program that's been focused in Nelson, I believe Kelowna, and Nanaimo, where repeat serial property offenders are going to be targeted. I will guarantee those folks are, by and large, folks who a judge will look at and say, you should be in secure care.
Yeah.
Sending you to jail is not going to make it better. No one out here is screaming, oh, criminalize it, 3 strikes, you're out, you go to jail forever. People are not saying that, but that is the kind of rhetoric you hear and have heard for a long time from people who are afraid to acknowledge the failure of the program that's being concluded now, and the failure of us to respond in a meaningful way to this crisis. This is not a crisis anymore. As I've said publicly at council meetings, it's become the norm in British Columbia. Since when did it become the norm to pass by people using drugs in our streets? People have no place to sleep, and thousands of them. When did that become the norm?
Mayor Krog, thank you for your time this morning. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you for continuing to bring this to the public attention. I really and sincerely hope that we'll finally start to see some significant progress. Let us end this misery.
I think you echo the thoughts of a lot of people there. Thank you so much. That is Leonard Krog, the mayor of Nanaimo.